But I have a question for you, Bill, because you had the reoccurrence of the brain, the bleeding is like, what do you think? What's your what's been told to you? What could you give feedback to somebody like me and say, this is what they told me, this is what to avoid, is there
So
anything?
I'm kind of the guy, I love the motto, expect the best, prepare for the worst. And I'm just preparing the whole time for the worst case scenario. So I went through that process of changing my diet, of course, stop smoking, stop drinking. I wasn't exercising because I couldn't exercise. And then when it happened again, basically I was the fittest, healthiest, best version of myself. When I went into surgery, I said to the doctors, be the best patient they've ever had.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Bill from recoveryafterstroke.com. This is episode 138, and my guest today is Kent Bragg. Kent was chillaxing on his hotel bed naked when he experienced strange symptoms in his head, and when he tried to stand up, he collapsed to the floor with his left side paralyzed due to a brain hemorrhage. You got to listen to this episode to see how it turned out for Kent. It's pretty funny and serious at the same time. Now, if you enjoy the Recovery After Stroke podcast and you think that others should hear the amazing stories of these excellent stroke survivors, please tell others about the podcast and share it on your favorite social media app. Also, leave the Recovery After Stroke podcast a 5-star review on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the thumbs up button and subscribe to get notified of new episodes. Thanks so much for listening. And now it's on with the show. Kent Bragg, welcome to the podcast.
Excellent. Thanks, Bill.
Hey, tell us a little bit about what happened to you, Kent.
So, 2020, I had a pretty unusual year. In addition to the pandemic that everyone else experienced and the lockdowns and shutdowns, I was working out in California. I'm from Ohio, and I was self-employed at a construction management company, and I was working out in California. In January, I went out to California for a couple of months just to get some work in and head back home. Well, while I'm there, I'm working for a small automotive company, maybe you've heard of. They build electric cars, Tesla. But so I'm out there, and yeah, so excellent experience. My wife flies out for Valentine's weekend. You know, it's a great overall experience. The pandemic hits, and so we get through the pandemic. I come home, and the company called me and said, "Hey, Kent, you're one of the few people that's willing to keep traveling during the pandemic, which was already stressful enough. And you're trying to balance whether it's the right decisions, but you still want to make an income for the family and keep everything in balance." So I took an assignment to go to Hermosillo, Mexico, on a Ford project. And I got to Mexico, and things went well. Before we had to go to Mexico, we had to get a full physical as part of the package. My vitals checked out well. I was the kind of guy that I was 49. I was an ex-military veteran, in shape and no issues, no health issues at all. So we're really only worried about COVID, nothing else. There's no other health concerns or reasons to be scared. As soon as I get down there, we become more isolated from the U.S. border. They create some closures across the border. They classified us as essential workers. I'm not too sure how essential we were. We were in automotive trying to keep the economy moving, for nothing else, right? So, but I had a clean bill of health. Get down there working hard. The motto we developed, Bill, was let's work hard and get out of here. And so we kept the pedal to the metal. It was about 115 degrees Fahrenheit every day, 45 C-ish all the time. And on August 14th, normal day, I felt fine. Actually, we called it early that day. I went to the hotel, And I was laying, actually, it's part of the whole story. So kind of my introduction when I talk to people is what I've learned is stroke is not discriminatory in any way. It doesn't matter what age, race, what sex you are. The only thing I think is kind of unique and interesting was my story was kind of unique because here I am in Mexico working, and I had stripped off all my clothes to get ready to lay down and relax for a little while before going out. So I'm laying on my bed naked, reading Google News, laying on my back, and I felt this quick. It felt like a little dizziness, like a quick twinge, but no pain. And I really had nothing leading up to that moment. And my instincts, for some reason, were to try and stand up. So I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and stood up, and instantly my left side was just paralyzed. And I collapsed into the headboard to my left. And then part of my story, I have like 3 elements of my story is luck, great people, and hard work. The luck part was when I fell back to the right, I hit my cell phone. It was on the edge of the bed, and it fell beside me to the floor. So that was I didn't know at the time. I thought have you ever seen like YouTube videos with athletes and they're crossing the finish line and everything's going kind of haywire and you can't control your body and your muscles are spasming? So I thought I was in some sort of dehydration when I hit the ground. That's what I thought. But then as I lay there, of course, I think my first instinct, I realized I was naked and I was in trouble. So that kind of crossed my mind.
Hang on. You were in trouble because you can't walk, or you were in trouble because you were naked?
Because I was naked, but I didn't know at the time I couldn't walk. It's like your mother said.
You can't walk. Yeah. Mate, you're not in trouble because you're naked. You're
That's right.
Because you can't walk, my friend.
That's right. So it's like when we were young, our mother would say, make sure you have clean underwear in case you got in an accident. You didn't want to have dirty clothes, right? So I'm on the floor.
Quickly deleting your iPhone Google search history as well.
Yeah, well, I hadn't picked up my phone yet. It didn't really register. So I'm staring at this door across the room, and I thought, I'll drag myself to the door and kind of yell for help. Well, in Mexico, I knew enough Spanish. I use Google Translate 99% of the time. And I knew just enough Spanish to maybe yell for someone, maybe order some food, like I knew enough. We had an interpreter there, actually, that was helping us. So I thought, well, if I can get to the door and yell, I can find some help. Bill, my right arm was strong. As everyone knows, it was a right frontal. My left side, nothing was happening. And I couldn't process it at first. So I pulled on the bed, which was beside me, so hard it actually pulled off the casters. I got this mess now. And then I just laid my head down and I thought, I'm going to die here. I can't, something's wrong really bad. I thought maybe a heart attack. And I just laid my head on the floor. And as I did, that phone was right in my peripheral vision, right beside me. And so I got my phone and I dialed. I had one other coworker in the same hotel. And normally, I think this is the other part of the luck story, he never answers the phone after when we're out of work because he doesn't want to be bothered, right? He's one of those guys, which is okay. I respect that. And this time, Bill, I heard, hey, Kent, what's up? And I was like, oh, I said, Steve, I'm in trouble. Something's wrong. I don't know what. Can you get the hotel manager and come to my room? And with the COVID situation, everyone was kind of leery about how you interact with people. And in Mexico, they were very cautious about who could go to rooms. So it seemed like forever. And I'm still laying there naked thinking about, okay, now these people are coming to my room. I have no clothes on. So they come to the room. I immediately asked my friend, hey, buddy, can you pick me up, put some shorts on me? Because I don't want to be like encountered by some Mexican paramedics or go to a hospital naked in the through the lobby. So anyway, the hotel manager calls 911. The paramedics show up, and the English, the translation was a big issue, right? I couldn't communicate. They couldn't understand what I was experiencing, I think. I didn't really know how to communicate what I was experiencing. I just kept drinking water over and over and over. I thought I was dehydrated. So we got a hold of our translator. They were going to take me to the public hospital. She said, absolutely not. Please do not take this gringo from Ohio to the public hospital. We'll take him to, they had a private hospital in Sonora. It was sponsored by the university. And so I get to the hospital and the doctor walks in and So luckily from my neck down, I was okay. I didn't have any facial paralysis, but from my shoulder down, couldn't move hands, fingers. And the doctor looks at me and he says, it's probably a vascular problem. I was like, what's a vascular problem? I had no idea. And he explained to me something's probably ruptured in my brain or maybe an aneurysm. And so they right away took me in for a CAT scan. I had a hemorrhage about 1 centimeter in, and it was about a half centimeter in diameter, the hemorrhage. He was very optimistic. We could get this under control. We just needed to relax. So at this point, I call my wife in the US, and all I said to her, because I didn't know actually, it was right before they told me it was I didn't know it was wrong. And I'm like, hey, I'm in the hospital. I don't know what's wrong. I'll call you back. And she's like, I got a million questions. And at the end of the moment, I'm like, I don't have any answers. I'll call you back. And I kind of hung up. And when you reflect on all those things, you're like, I don't know if that was the best approach. Right?
That's terrible.
Yeah. So, so then I ended up in the ICU for the rest of the night. They got me on medication and got me up to a room.
Wow.
So that,
wow.
Yeah. So that got me to in the room. I sort of just allowed myself to relax. Wasn't scared and got into the moment of it too much, because I don't even think I really understood what it meant to have a cerebral hemorrhage. I didn't contemplate it, I don't think. And my wife is behind the scenes at home. She's Googling and talking to people, and she realizes the high percentage of mortalities and long-term effects. So they allowed me to rest on Saturday, Sunday. The nurses came in. We're using Google Translate, talking to each other. I said, I would like somebody to put me on a handicap chair. I would like to shower. I want to try somehow. The only way I can get out of here and get home is to start moving and try to get out of this. And they're like, no, try to stay calm. You have an MRI on Monday. But then my physical therapist, Alberto, he started very big man, came in, young guy, but he had a very gentle touch, and he was very good with me in not just teaching me some static exercises, but breathing and symmetry and the things I needed to do that he knew I needed to be able to get out of that hospital and attempt to get back to the USA.
Yeah.
So at that moment, Bill, my mission wasn't like the stroke, like the paralysis and that kind of fear gripping me. It was, how do I get to the USA? Like how do I get to that point where I can go home?
Wow. That's the concern in your mind, is how to get home.
How to get home, because I'm 5 hours south of the border. There's no flights. I can't move. And people started calling me, I'm getting messages from friends in the US. They're like, why doesn't someone just throw you in an ambulance and drive you across America? It's like, no. First of all, I don't want that, because I wasn't comfortable with the ability to try and get into something like that and then be in a something. So I called my wife, and I pretty much concluded I have to get to the point where I can become at least mobile enough to get into a vehicle and be able to manage myself to the US and get on an airplane and fly to Ohio. Right.
That's delusional though. Like how could you possibly be in that state where all you're trying to do is work out how to get home? You've got a brain hemorrhage.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be going anywhere, doing anything, because it could get worse very dramatically and very quickly. Did anyone explain that, or was it lost in translation?
So it was explained to me. I had two neurologists, and they were excellent. And they did explain to me the dangers, and it even came down to the very last. So in the end, Bill, I ended up a week in the hospital and a week in a hotel. Was how I ended up 2 weeks of like this, trying to get well enough to like travel. Right. So it ended up being 2 weeks. And every day the neurologists, they would come and sit and talk to me, and they were excellent doctors. And the very last day before I left, I had to go see the neurologist, and he explained to me the risks of flying. But what we were all trying to balance is the recovery what we should be afraid of? I mean, we got COVID going on, we got border shutdowns, we got how do we balance all these factors, right? So it was pretty crazy. But during the day, while I was in the hospital, my therapist would come for an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, And all day I would sit on my bed, lifting my dead arm and my dead leg. And the nurses would look in and say, Kent, do you stop? I said, I got to figure this out somehow, right? I just, and I was just trying to figure out some way to be able to recover. And
So,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
so what caused the hemorrhage? What caused the blood vessel to burst?
So I never did get a real good answer. Initially, everyone says blood pressure, but then even when I was in the hospital, the everyone's taking they're like, your blood pressure is good, you're healthy. I was a runner, so I naturally had a pretty mild, 117 over 65-ish, 52 heart rate resting. They think maybe it was environmental, too much of heat, too much of like the work, like working that much in the heat. When I came to the US, they asked me about any bacteria because that could contribute to something to happen. I was checked in MRI and 3 CAT scans for any deformations in the vessels. Bill, to this day, nobody can firmly tell me this is why it happened. And part of my longer story is I think that, and I'm sure for lots of stroke victims, and from Facebook, being parts of different groups and blogs, it's a part of the fear for people is, how did it happen, right? Why did it happen?
Yeah. So with your blood vessel, it burst, and then did it stop bleeding? Is it confirmed to have stopped bleeding? And did they need to open your head, operate, any of that stuff?
So they did not have to open my head. So it went until Monday. So it happened on Friday night. On Monday night, I had to go for a second MRI. I had one on Sunday, and then Monday night, they had to make the decision whether they had to go in. And at that point, through medication, it had slowed down enough. They decided they did not have to go into my head. So it did stop on its own.
Are you being monitored now for potential further bleeds or anything like that? Are you still going to MRI?
Yeah. So now it's down to CAT scans, and they monitor the size of the area, and so now it's down to about 4 months of monitoring. In the beginning, it was every month for 2 months, and then now it's kind of like a quarterly check on the CAT scan.
So there's still blood in your brain. There's still a clot of blood that has leaked out of the blood vessel that's still sitting in your brain.
That's right. It's about the size of a walnut, about 1 inch in.
Yeah. Well, that's quite big. So mine was about the size of a golf ball at its peak, and it was there for about a year, and then it finally got better, and then it went away, and then it bled again, and then there was another surgery, and then there was surgery in 2014. So almost 3 years after the first bleed, I had a third bleed, and then I had to have surgery. So at the moment, you've got away with it, and it's a good outcome. And I remember feeling amazing and really, really well before the third bleed, and then not understanding exactly what stroke was, because I had a very mild version of it, and I had a very I didn't even experience any left side issues, no numbness, no loss of mobility, none of that until after my surgery. So up until that, for 3 years, I was a little bit naive about what stroke really was. And then when I woke from surgery, I had to learn how to walk again and use my left arm and all that kind of thing. So it sounds like you got a really big shock. You couldn't walk. You had the massive impact from the bleed in the head, and then it seems to have slowly gotten better, and you're walking, you're moving around, I'm seeing. Are you left with any other residual issues? Do you feel any numbness or altered sensation or memory problems, anything at all?
So now I'm actually like I'm jogging now, like I do some physical running, but I still have, and it's funny, Bill, when I first went to the hospital, I've had nerve pain right here in my left shoulder and in my upper bicep. And when I was in the hospital, they would ask me what my pain levels were, and it was always just this nerve that was a high pain threshold. And to this day, I have real limited rotation in this left arm and the left shoulder. it's funny, I can move in a linear motion, no pain, but in a rotation or an extension, it like to put a coat on, it's like a tremendous amount of pain. So that's kind of, and then when I was learning to walk again from the drop foot, I got a hyperextended left knee.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost, because that foot just kept hitting in odd positions and hyperextending. And then I was real close to a stress fracture on my left foot because the drop foot and my foot constantly impacting incorrectly. So I ended up I had a different orthotic shoe with a higher arch that would kind of try to force my foot to land flatter. I was in that for about a month. And that resolved itself. But yeah, the residual is in the left. But I have a question for you, Bill, because you had the reoccurrence of the brain, the bleeding is like, what do you think? What's been told to you? What could you give feedback to somebody like me and say, this is what they told me, this is what to avoid, is there anything?
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Yeah, there is. So my feedback would be, we didn't know what caused the bleed in my brain for about 2.5 years. And then as the blood in my head started to decrease in size and the MRI was able to see behind the blood, because the blood creates a magnetic effect because there's iron in blood, so you can't see. MRI is not effective.
Right.
In diagnosing the actual cause. What happened was, when it got small enough, the bleed in the head, they were able to see the blood vessel was actually faulty, or it was an arteriovenous malformation, which is a malformed blood vessel. And under high blood pressure episodes, and I didn't have high blood pressure either, but that could be a little bit of dehydration, running, stress, whatever.
Yeah.
The thinnest, most weak blood vessel basically just gives way.
Gotcha.
So we learned that at about 2.5 years in, that was the issue. And what I was told was that most of the times that these bleed once in a blue moon, and then sometimes they never bleed again. They heal and they never bleed. It's very rare for them to bleed a second time, extremely rare for them to bleed a third time. But the advice was, let's monitor it and then let's see what happens. So I used to go to monthly MRIs, and then bi-monthly, and then quarterly, and then every 6 months. And then by the time we got to 2.5 years, everything started to look really good.
Okay.
And then by about 24, 25 months, somewhere there, I'm not sure exactly what it was, maybe a bit beyond that actually, just approaching the 3-year mark, I woke up in the morning and I felt numbness in my left side. When I was going to work, I was in the car, and it felt like it was also burning, like there was sunburn on one side of my body only. And I went to hospital and they said it bled again. And then my surgeon said, we're probably in a situation where we need to remove it now, because leaving it there is riskier than operating.
Right. So
what they said to me was, you need to pay attention to body, your changes, anything you notice that you're not comfortable with, a headache, whatever. Take evasive action, go to the hospital, get it checked out immediately. Yeah. And then from there, it was me just kind of sitting, not waiting for another bleed. I'm kind of the guy, I love the motto, expect the best, prepare for the worst. And I'm just preparing the whole time for the worst case scenario. So I went through that process of changing my diet, of course, stop smoking, stop drinking. I wasn't exercising because I couldn't exercise because I was told not to exercise.
Right.
But I was walking and I was being active and I was back at work. So I was doing a lot of those things. And then when it happened again, basically I was the fittest, healthiest, best version of myself. When I went into surgery, I was able to, I said to the doctors, be the best patient they've ever had,
Yeah.
delivered them a really good person or body or whatever you want to call it for them to operate on. And there wasn't going to be a lot of complications with a guy like me, is basically what I was saying to them.
Yeah.
So we had a really successful surgery, except when I woke up, I couldn't feel my left side. And it had nothing to do with anything. It had to do with just the location of the faulty blood vessel that they had to remove.
Right.
So my suggestion would be, I think you're doing the right thing. You're on the right track. Always consult with your doctors and neurologists. And if you feel uncomfortable or uncertain, get them involved more often. Make more appointments, even if you have to pay for them, even if they're not covered by insurance, even if whatever. Just find a way to make it happen so that you can have peace of mind and your wife can have peace of mind. Because when we had peace of mind, we went about life differently, more calmly. And we did a few things, ticked a few things off the bucket list, because I did consider my mortality. I did think that this thing might kill me. So I started to just be as informed as possible by the medical world. And then with that information, I made decisions about how I'm going to approach my life, my day, my year, whatever. And it worked really well for us. It was my decision to have the surgery in the end. My surgeon still gave me the option to not have the surgery, but I decided to go for it. And then what's happened now is that blood vessel is no longer there and it can no longer bleed. There is no way that it can bleed again. So I've resolved the matter once and for all, even though I live with residual side effects, fatigue, left side tingling, numbness, balance issues, the whole kit and caboodle. The left side, is tenser, more tight, more cold, although nobody can tell. No one else can tell. So it's a bit of a strange situation to have this experience and not be able to express it in a way to other people. How does that resonate for you, my approach to?
No, I like that, and I appreciate you appreciate giving me that guidance, because I think in my mind, I think you're exactly right. I need to shift a little bit more into my regular follow-ups and make sure that's a priority. I think that's some excellent advice. I did right away, just out of fear. I cut out alcohol. I haven't had any alcohol or caffeine. I never smoked, but my wife was already on a good path. I got on her path, and it's like I'll try anything to not have that happen again. The paralysis was so debilitating. Every time I read a story or I see it's happened to somebody, or someone is on Facebook expressing how they feel, it's unimaginable. And to avoid that, I'm willing to do anything. Right. So exactly what you said, that advice, that even if it costs you money, if it costs you time, if it costs you a sacrifice, I appreciate what you said, because I definitely want to hold on to that as much as my internal grit of jogging and changing lifestyle. Right. So I really appreciate it. I did change. So I ended up I worked for myself. I ended up in October. I was okay. So I only, like 10 weeks in, I was already, like, my doctor said, hey, you're clear, you can do things. So I already got, like, back into travel and then going. I went out to Phoenix for a project, and Bill, the anxiety became overwhelming, and I couldn't explain it. I had emotions that I never had before. Like, I felt impatient. I felt anxious. When I was in the hotel, I wouldn't go anywhere, even the bathroom or the shower, without a phone in my hand because of that fear. It took me down so fast. It wasn't like a sprained ankle, firsthand. I don't need to explain to anybody that's a stroke victim listen to this. It wasn't, I've tried to tell people this wasn't like a sprained back or a sprained leg or a twinge in your neck. This was paralysis took me down. And then I started replaying all these scenarios in my head. What if I, like you said, what if I was driving? What if I was by myself somewhere? What if I was in the shower? What if I didn't have, and all this started to grip me and I gave it all up. And my wife's even like, just stop, stay home, find a job close to the house, come home every day for lunch and take a nap. I never used to be one of those, I don't need a nap guy. I don't need a nap. I don't need this. I don't need water. I don't need anything, right? and people that take naps are wimps and they don't work hard enough. Now I come home with every day and I take like a 15, 20-minute nap because that I've learned that's what, when we go too hard, even me now, I feel it very directly right here, right where it happened. And that's when I know to slow down.
And you're not supposed to have any nerve endings in your brain. You're not supposed to actually have any feelings in your brain. So don't ask me how, but I also feel my brain hurt when stuff is happening and I can't process it. I feel it hurt, but it's not supposed to be possible because you don't have any nerve sensations there, any nerve endings. So I don't know what it is, but what you said about coming home and napping is the best way to heal the brain. Like it is what the brain needs to recover. And there's an amazing book by Matthew Walker called Why We Sleep. And that talks about all the reasons why we must sleep. And it is a fascinating 20-year life story. He's been researching it for 20 years. So he's got an amazing insight. And sleep is your best friend. So if you can squeeze in naps, A, it's going to recharge your batteries, but B, it's going to actually recharge your brain cells and how they operate and how they move. Hydration obviously makes sense. You need to rehydrate yourself. That's really important because that's going to impact on fatigue. And driving short distances and traveling less, I think it's a great move. You guys did really the right thing. And if it helps at the same time to reduce your anxiety, that's a bonus. My wife decided that in 2013, so the first bleed happened in March 2012, and then in Feb 2012, and then in March 2012, the second bleed. And in 2013, for New Year's, my wife decided to leave Melbourne, Australia, and fly all the way to New York to have New Year's in New York. And I'm losing my shit, Kent. I'm going like, I didn't say no, but internally I was losing my shit. How am I going to be in the US? All I ever hear about the US is how bad their medical system is. The flight is 20 hours. If I have another bleed in the airplane, that's it. It's all over.
That's it.
What the hell am I going to do? Why am I leaving my comfort zone? Why am I leaving being 5 minutes from hospital to being probably a half a day from hospital? Why am I doing that? And if that happens in the US, it's going to cost me my house, my car, my everything. I'm stuck.
Right.
Nonetheless, I didn't let the fear control the decision. So I just I said to her, you organize everything and I'll turn up. If you can do that, I'll turn up. And that's what she did. And we're in the US. I paid for the most expensive insurance. I made sure that it covered for previous medical history issues. I made sure that it was going to cover for hospitalizations, all that kind of stuff. So it became, when we got to New York and we were in there and we were experiencing, December 26th in Manhattan, and then we were working our way up to the 1st of January 2013, all that stuff went away because I was there and I knew there was a hospital nearby and I was covered and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
Every time we've traveled since then, it's been the same for me. I can't seem to get myself over that part of the, why am I leaving my safety net? Why am I leaving my cave?
Yeah.
Now, it makes sense and it's logical. Your body's going to, don't be stupid, mate. Like, you've gone through something serious. Stay home.
Right.
And make sure you're near help. I mean, that's really logical. So it's a conversation that you've got to have with your head, your heart, and your gut, and your whole body. And you've got to go, okay, what are you telling me? Why is that important? Okay, what's really important to me right now? Where do I need to really be? Okay, what action do I need to take? And what do I not need to take? And you have to have this kind of internal dialogue and negotiation with yourself and make sure that it's not just in your head. And also, you have to be completely comfortable with the fact that you're anxious about this shit, because you know what? It's something to be anxious about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's all excellent points. When I first was traveling to Phoenix, as soon as I would get in a hotel bill, I felt like I needed like my blood pressure I went and bought one of those blood pressure wrist things. I was so nervous about it. I'm like reading my blood pressure every 10 minutes, and it was always normal, but I'm in and I think it was some attachment, right? Some connection to being alone and that happening. And since I've been home, in fact, it was funny when I was out there working, when I would get stressed, my left leg would feel heavy again.
Yes.
It scared the hell out of me. And that's when I told my wife, so I've been home now for about 4 months straight, and I've had no issues like that, none. And it's the environment, and like you said, in your head, right? In my head, something's going to happen. I'm not home. All these factors, right? My doctor's not here. My family's not here. It's COVID. There's restrictions, and separating myself from that helped tremendously.
My coaching clients often go through this, and they often work themselves up and then notice their symptoms are worse. Then they work themselves up more. Then the symptoms get worse, and so on and so on. So what's happening is when you're stressing, you're tensing your muscles, you're decreasing blood flow, you're decreasing oxygenization of your body and your cells. Mm-hmm. You're increasing perhaps your heart rate, so your blood's pumping faster. And of course, under those circumstances, you may as well be running a marathon.
Right.
And fatigue is going to kick in, and then you're going to notice your deficits more. And the best way to reduce your deficits is to breathe, calm down your breathing. That will open your blood vessels and increase blood flow. That will increase oxygenation.
Right.
And it will start to put you in an autonomic balanced state rather than a autonomic stressed state.
Right.
And that's basically what you're doing. Is a lot of people don't realize that their head is in control of the process that's occurring in their body, because they're overthinking something and their body's going, I better do what my head's telling me to do, because my head's telling me there's shit's going wrong. I need to ramp up. I need to jump into fight and flight because my head's telling me that stuff's going wrong.
Right.
So you can intervene at that level by becoming aware of that and then breathing and then kind of circumventing the head and just getting into your body, because then the head has to follow the body.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I think the other part of all this, Bill, so my 50th birthday was Christmas Eve last year, right? So all of a sudden you feel like I just had it. I'm getting ready to enter those years where I feel like now we're just gonna take off, and you're kind of at the end of the working life, and then boom, you have this cerebral hemorrhage that is like shook up our world. And I think that was another big element of, you know, like in my case, you stop feeling like a man of the house, like a man that's there to take care of his family, and you like a leader in your industry. Like all of a sudden you just feel like something else, right? And I'm sure it's not just stroke victims, it's people that have cancers or anything else that occurs to them, but it's got a lot better for me. But to be honest, that first like 5 months, I probably had more I was dealing with psychologically than my physical part. I was real proud of myself, but psychologically I was dealing with a lot of different fears. I think a lot of fears, and I never really had fears in my life. And all of a sudden I had these fears, right?
Did you seek anyone
I learned
to help you?
I'm sorry?
Did you seek out anyone to help you?
Not professionally. It was hard. When I came back from Mexico, no one would see me because I had been in Mexico, right? So even just to get into the neurologist took me 3 weeks. And my first neurologist was only going to see me via video 6 weeks later. And I said, no, I've already been instructed by the neurologist in Mexico. I need to have another CAT scan at that 4-week mark. So that was going to be mid-September. They weren't going to see me till October on video. And I was like, I can't do this. So my wife kept calling. And finally found somebody in a different city that was willing to see me. And physical therapists wouldn't see me. It was 5 weeks from the time I got home before I could get into physical therapy.
Yeah.
So if I wouldn't have had like my guys in Mexico, so in Mexico, when you talk about cost, when I stayed in the, they were going to discharge me like on Thursday. It happened on Friday. They're going to discharge me. I asked them, I begged them. I said, please, can I stay till Friday because I'm scared. I told the doctor straight up. I said, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I have some friends here, but you know, I said, I don't really know what to do. So I arranged to go to a hotel and get a handicap room. And I arranged with the hospital to send nurses to the room in the morning. And a physical therapist, the same physical therapist, would come visit me at the hotel. Bill, the nursing was $6 US an hour to come to the hotel to help me. And the physical therapist was $30. I come back to the US, my first visit with the copay for physical therapy and occupational therapy, when I finally got to, was over $500, right? So luckily when I was in Mexico, I could keep paying for the people to come every day. Like we were just playing screwball stuff. Me and the nurse guys would play catch with a ball a little bit. You know, we would do little agility things. The physical therapist, he knew I was trying to get enough agility, strength, whatever. It wasn't much strength, but more balance control. So he was pushing me hard. Like he's got me in the hotel room doing swimming moves. I'm going, I couldn't even move my arm. I'm going, I can't do it. He's going stronger in Spanish. Go. I'm like, so I come home and I told my wife, I said, I read a book. I was calling it up when I was talking to you, The Brain's Way of Healing by Dr. Dodge. It's a good book. I read that when I was on Google Books while I was in the hospital. And I called my wife. I said, buy me a TENS machine off Amazon, the best we can get off Amazon, obviously not medical grade, but still. And one of those under desk bicycle things, because Alberto in Mexico was teaching me a lot about symmetry. Everything I had to do with him was symmetry. It's all symmetrical, every single exercise, right? Nothing was without symmetry. So my theory was if I could stimulate these muscles that weren't doing anything on their own, and I could get on this symmetrical bike and keep doing the static exercises, at least till I got to physical therapy, I would be at a good foundational base. And then luckily the weather was good enough. It wasn't winter here. My wife would take me to our local college. I would do steps, get in the wheel. I would step with my cane. But again, to seek help, it was hard because I couldn't get into places. And it just became, luckily, and I think it's, a lot of caregivers, I read about that, on different Facebook sites. Luckily my wife, like she bought into it wholeheartedly. Like this is a mission of ours, not just mine, to try and rehabilitate and food and rest. And I'd blow my stack and we went for a walk one time and I got upset and threw my cane across the parking lot. Things all happen, right? Sometimes got a little wacky about I couldn't walk. I was frustrated and I would fall down but luckily I think a huge part of it in my ability to learn to grip with it was I had someone on my side that was going through it with me.
Yeah.
And the fact that we decided together, like, look, this professional stuff going abroad is going all over is not going to work. So to answer your question, no, I didn't get professional help. I don't want to make any excuses for it because I think there is value in it, but
there's value in it. But you had a stroke at the worst time, and you can't really do anything about that. I know lots of people who had stroke during COVID, and unfortunately, they all went through the same kind of terrible time trying to access support, help, anything. And it's one of the bigger issues about stroke at the moment. It's that it's delaying people getting support and getting help and getting physical therapy,
sure.
and therefore it's making the recovery more challenging. So, it's a real issue. And look, it's not something that you can't do. It's something that you can do at any time. And why I'm saying that is because stroke recovery is not just about the physical part. It's an emotional recovery. It's a mental recovery, and it's a physical recovery. There's 3 elements to it. And if you're just doing one of them, you're not paying attention to the rest of the recovery. It's really important that you're not just doing one of them and not paying attention to the others. Emotionally, my biggest recovery, I think, was the emotional one, and it still is. And I spoke about it on Instagram blog post I did the other day, which was about um, emotions that just come out of nowhere. And I start crying. I'm at a party and I'm with people and they ask a lovely question or they're curious to know about me. And I start telling them a little bit of a story. And then before I know it, I'm, crying all over the place. And it still happens. And it's 9 years out. So that's kind of where the majority of my ongoing recovery is sort of focused at. Mentally, I did the counseling, psychology, all that kind of stuff. And I still do. I still get counseling and coaching because I don't believe that I'm going to do all these things in my life on my own. I'm trying to have a podcast and run a podcast and run my life and run my family and run my work and all that kind of stuff. Imagine trying to do that all on your own and not knowing how to do any of it and relearning how to do it. I mean, it's just not something that everyone should take on their own, on their own alone. It's something that you should reach out for support with. And the support doesn't need to be dramatic, but somebody taught me how to record an audio in an interview and then how to put that on a podcast page. Like, if I had tried to work it out myself, it would have taken forever. And I don't have forever to try and solve every problem on my own. When you're working with Tesla, they've got people to help with everything.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. It's because Kent Bragg, he cannot work out how to make a Tesla car work on his own.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's why when I was going through recovery and I started like jogging and running again, that replaced like some of my profession, like how I used to be 100 miles an hour in my profession. I think it's replacing that because psychologically, it's a way for me to measure progress. I'm that kind of person, right? It's a way for me to fill that void. And for a while, my wife thought I was getting wacky because like 2-3 times a day, I'm getting on my treadmill doing a mile or two. And she's like, I think you're getting addicted to this. But I think kind of like what you were saying, it was a way for me to feel like I was making progress and measure it, right? Because in my profession, because I changed gears in my professional life, and another thing to back up, and I'm sure people can relate with this, I go back in the professional world, and all of a sudden there was like some simple things I couldn't figure out, like some simple math things, and that was my thing before. And like somebody asked me something in a meeting and I said something like crazy. It wasn't even accurate. I'm thinking after the meeting, I was like, what? Like I couldn't like process it immediately. And so like the exercising and the fitness became a way for me to measure some progress. What's kind of scary is what happens if you don't want to do that anymore. Like where do you keep finding the way to know you're okay? Like after the stroke?
Curiosity. That's it. Just get curious and notice the little things. I asked the other day, on the Instagram page, what are some of the little things that people have had a win in recently? So in order to try and get people focusing on the little wins, so not the big ones, not I can run a marathon again. That's kind of what the question was about. And have a listen to what some of the people said. My mum woke up and cooked a meal for me. Better balance to ride my tricycle. My 5-year anniversary is coming up. Since my stroke 2 years ago, I lost my appetite, and now I have my appetite back. I was able to wiggle my toes in my left foot. Haven't been able to do that since the stroke. And put flip-flops on.
Right.
I went back to where I was 2 months ago with my family. I was snowboarding.
Oh.
I could tie up my running shoelaces.
Yeah. I remember those days.
So that's how you measure it. You measure it by the little wins. Of course, you measure the big wins. I'm walking again, or I'm moving again, or I'm working again. But you measure all those little things as well. And when you haven't got anything that's obvious, just become grateful for what you've got. And gratitude is going to take you to the next level, even though you're not really noticing changes or anything like that. But just noticing that you're grateful about stuff is a really good thing. I just started to become grateful about things that I could do. After I wasn't walking, I couldn't walk. I was just grateful that I had opportunity to be in a hospital where they could teach me how to walk again. My God.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I developed I think for the future I want to study like some physical therapy kind of education, like try to get into more of that. I have a deep empathy. A lot of people I read on this, on different sites, all of a sudden you have an empathy for people to go through this.
Mm.
Um, because in the U.S. and maybe other places, I can't speak for everywhere, but if you don't have access to medical care or the funds, there's a huge gap between where people what you can get.
Yep.
And for some people that may not have been naturally athletic or naturally want to work out, or they may not be able to get that same sort of traction I think that I had.
Yeah.
So part of my passion as I get older now and as I move forward in my life is I want to be able to work with people and possibly help at a physical kind of coaching level. It's one of my passions now. And so
beautiful passion, mate. And it's for a great cause. And guess what's going to happen? As you're helping other people get physically more active and better, it's going to help you get physically more active and better. And it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens to me. When I'm coaching people, of course, I've got to practice where I preach. Otherwise, I can't really take them through a coaching. And I can't really be the guy who, says, do this and do what I say, not what I do. I can't be that guy. Right. So it helps you stay grounded to your core values, your core beliefs, and really it's like all these people listening to my podcast every month are keeping me accountable. There's 4,000 downloads a month nearly. So, I've got to walk the walk and talk the talk, because what's the point of doing it if I'm not? And that's what you'll find. You'll find that when you support somebody and you see somebody overcome something or achieve something, you're going to feel so good about that. So I really encourage you to do that. Now, I realize also that you're only about a year out. You're not that far out from stroke.
Right. Yeah, no, it'll be 8 months in April. So yeah.
Just give yourself time, mate.
Yeah.
Allow yourself the time to just get you right first. Do you first and then worry about everyone else. I didn't start my podcast until 2015. And that was a full year after my brain surgery, but it was almost 3 and a bit years after my initial experience.
Okay.
And even then I wasn't really into it fully. I was interviewing people haphazardly and not too much and not with too much focus. So I was just doing it just to meet people all over the world, and it was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give yourself heaps of time to just get Kent right.
Yeah.
And then start focusing on everybody else. But if that brings you joy, helping other people when you can, when you feel up to it, then do that as well.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I've been so my new job's is at a university that's real close to our home. So that's been a real rewarding change coming out of primarily I was in automotive my entire life. So now it's a real nice transition into a different way of thinking, a different way of prioritizing, like my efforts and where they're going and that larger perspective of, why do I get up every single morning and go do something? So it's been pretty neat. And I think that's, again, the beginning of my story. It's luck, great people, and hard work is kind of how I structure my story. And I think kind of luck at the end there is also still because I still have great people and things have worked out well. And, but I really, it's funny. I never knew anything about a stroke ever. I didn't know anything about anything really medical, to be honest with you. I was kind of like a nuts and bolts, like I said, industrial automotive dude.
Yeah.
And now I'm like learning about sites like yours and talking to people online and the experience. And people have lots of different types of stroke, obviously.
Yeah.
Some that, it affects the speech and memory, and there's so many elements of it, and there's so many parts of it that are really scary, right? There's so many different ways and types of strokes that could happen.
Yeah.
But going through it, I definitely developed a strong sense of empathy for people going through it. People, I never really thought a lot about ADA, the American Disabilities Act, until I was in a wheelchair. And I'm in this hotel in Phoenix the night before my flight, fancy, like a Radisson hotel, real fancy. Well, the carpet's too long. I can't wheel. I can't get in the door. I could, it's like all of a sudden you start to think about these things that are important to people that are handicapped in that situation. And so it definitely changed my life. And it's I don't feel that gripping fear. It's starting to not be the gripping fear, but it's still a respectful feeling of, like you said, walk the walk and talk the talk. Because, now even people in other conditions that I work with or encounter, they have things that have nothing to do with a stroke. But I say, hey, what's going on with your diet? Or hey, how's your hydration look? I used to be that guy. I only got coffee from water and beer. That's it. That's where I got my water from, right? So, but now all I drink is water all day, and I find it refreshing. It took about 6 months, and for about the first 5 months after the stroke, and every night I would dream about having a beer with guys and hanging out, right? It was like this psychological thing, but now, I'm reminded of it, and I, remind people like, hey, what's your diet look like? You're having some blood pressure issues. What's your diet look like? You're having strains in your knees. Like, what can you do from a physical standpoint to help with that?
Yeah.
So those were some of the things that, beyond the physical part, that,
the thing you mentioned with the beer with the mates, it's also an emotional thing, because if you think about it, having a beer with your mates, talking junk and just having a laugh and relaxing, it's got a lot to do with the emotional aspect of that. That's how we connect with people. And I don't know about your mates, but my mates struggled when I stopped drinking alcohol and going out with them to bars or clubs or wherever, and then drinking water or asking for a nice water to make it look in the same glass as a vodka, to make it look like I was having a vodka,
Yeah.
So they really struggled with that. It was a bit of an issue for them, more so than it was for me, because for me it was a no-brainer. It was no chance I was having alcohol, especially in that critical period where things could go seriously wrong, So,
right.
So
I've even had some people challenge me and say, they told you can't have alcohol. And nobody flat out told me, or nobody said you can't have coffee. No one said you can't. And I still have decaf coffee sometimes, right? Just for the flavor.
Yeah.
So no doctor specifically said it, but the more I read, like, number one thing was keep blood pressure down, right? So anything that was a blood pressure increaser became a priority.
That's it.
And my response to them always is somewhere along the lines, not exactly, but no one told me, but that paralysis was my scared straight program that fast, right?
It.
I mean, you want to scare somebody straight? That was it, because to be in that situation again, I'll do whatever I have to do to avoid it, no matter what it is.
I hear you. And I also say to them, you don't want me to be sick again, do you? And
Right,
I do a little bit of the emotional blackmail on them, because they mean well, and I know why they're saying what they're saying. It's just, I can't be the same like I was, because I'm not the same anymore. Things changed that day, and I'm not willing to go back to that. And I tell them now that, when I drink, I feel like I'm having another stroke. I mean, that's not fun anymore. Like, it doesn't feel nice. I know I'm not having another stroke, but that's what it feels like. I'm not interested.
Yeah. That's what I told my wife, and she supports me 100%. In fact, I joke with her all the time, honey, we get Modelo's tonight, right? So it's our kind of the joke, because we know we're not going to, but that feeling of not having control again, I don't want to do it. It's scary to me.
Yeah.
And as I'm talking to you, Bill, you notice I touch right in that spot. It's still psychologically that, like, it's still an impact.
It is. I know, because I do that with my side. I always do this. Like, I always try to, I don't know, massage it or calm it down or something. I don't know what it is, but I find my hand going there, especially when I'm having that, head stress moment, that stressful moment or whatever. My head's overdoing some story, and I need to bring things down. You know, I've got to go there and touch it and stop it, and you know, do all these things and massage my own head, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but it works.
Yeah.
And people would think that I'm bizarre and weird, which I am, but even more so.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to one of the things I wanted to give you is a bit of a gift, and this gift is a gift of a particular word to shift you from being a stroke victim to being a stroke survivor.
Right. Yeah.
So the community talks about us as being survivors.
Yeah.
And I like that because what it does, it will shift your, perhaps it'll shift your state of victimhood,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll turn it into survivor. And the difference is massive. A victim is somebody who is at the whim of this thing that happened to them. A survivor is somebody that's going to become better because of it. So I'm going to give you that gift of, you have earned the right to call yourself a stroke survivor.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. And when I put my story on the American Heart Association, I redid it when I wanted to do my podcast with you, just so I could kind of reframe like the whole sort of story.
I love it.
But really, and I, you know, when I talk to people on at work or on the streets or out running or whatever we do, I want to encourage them to. I want to encourage them to you know, look at their life, and if they are having health issues, to do a self assessment, right? Maybe because I got to be honest with myself sometimes. Maybe it wasn't just some crazy fluke of too hot, too this, too. Maybe it was a part of because of what I was doing, right, my life.
Yeah.
And now the ability to take a self assessment is very valuable to me, and that's what I like to share out of my story is take a self assessment. If people in your life you need to talk to them, maybe, you know, give them a little bit of that takeaway from your assessment, right? And so it was pretty crazy, but you know, now I think I have a different way of looking at life for sure. The years, the days you count out seem to be more like you put it in perspective, right? You got you put it there, and I've had a lot of good positive things that have happened because of this. Or since this happened, that it's hard to quantify, right? It wasn't all bad. There's been a lot of good in my life now that's a result of what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can focus on that, that will help. But also when the terrible, difficult things come up, deal with them as well. I did what you just said as well. I also took responsibility for my own part, the role that I played in making that blood vessel bleed. There's no doubt about it. I was born with that. So it wasn't technically not, you know, my fault that it happened. And if I wasn't born with it, maybe I would have gone through life without a stroke, but perhaps a heart attack, you know, because I was smoking, I was drinking, I was working too much, I wasn't taking care of my body, I was stressed, I was yelling and screaming, and I was a mess. Like, there was so much shit that was going on that it makes sense that the weakest part of my body said, "No, I've had enough. I'm giving up on this guy, and I'm taking it. I'm gonna bleed or leak or whatever it was doing." And then if I wasn't born with that thing, like how many years, because I was 37, Kent, so how many years longer would it have taken for something else more dramatic to happen?
Right.
And if that did happen, could it have been catastrophic, and then we're not around to talk about it? And how much more time was I going to go live my life in that stressed out, crazy way? Because there was no enjoyment there. What was the point of living that kind of life? I was making everyone around me miserable.
Yeah.
So a lot of good has come from it. I'm the kind of guy, I've managed to get to that point where I can reflect back, and there's many people that can say the stroke was one of the best things that ever happened to them. Lots of people can't, and I accept that as well, and I'm okay with that. But I don't know, maybe there is a way for everybody to move towards that path, regardless of the wheelchair that you're in, regardless of the hand you can't move, or the job that you've lost and all that kind of thing. What are the gifts and what are the lessons that we can take out of it? Because we are not just our job, and we are not just the kind of people that we are when we walk or when we can use our arm. We are much, much more than that. And we have to find new ways to identify. And that is our responsibility to do that. It's no one else is going to help you find a way to be in the world with the deficits that you have. You've got to find a way. And I'll say this, and I'm going to say the only way I know how. It's a bit crass or a bit crude. You know what shits me is that the guy that wins a gold medal in the Paralympics perhaps waited until he was a paraplegic before he decided to put it out there and be the best in the world at the sport that he chose.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that he did it after that.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
It shits me that he waited that long, but I'm glad he did it eventually. You know, I don't know why we do it, because I'm that guy. Like, I know who I am. Like, I'm not talking about other people here. I'm talking about me. So I waited that long to do a podcast. I waited that long to go to New York. I waited that long to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And really, if it wasn't for my wife making me do those things so that I can brag that I've been to New York at New Year's Eve,
yeah,
I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have done it. I would have gone back into my shell.
Yep. Yeah, I burned up the last decade. My 40, burned it up on the road, lived car plant, all this high profile stuff. I rattled off to people. It sounds incredible. I've worked in aerospace. I've worked in mining. I worked in all these incredible things. My entire 40s burned up, probably 30s before that, to be honest with you, Bill. My 50s would have been burned up exactly the same because I wouldn't have stopped. Because it was the lifestyle, it was the money, it was the everything wrapped. Well, now all of a sudden, I'm not that guy. Now all of a sudden, I'm enjoying life. Now all of a sudden, me and my wife got the garden supplies out last weekend. We're ready to do. Last year, she did it all by herself because I was off doing car plants for other people, right?
Yeah.
So now, it's funny, when I changed gears in December and decided to stop going on the road, I told Donna, I said, I'm going to burn up this year, 2021, just like last year. And we didn't even go any further back because it gets too depressing. But all of a sudden now we're living a different life. And one of the most catastrophic things that, maybe not, to me it was, lots of things happen to different people, that maybe there's more still to happen. I don't know. But it took a catastrophic event to get me to this good spot I'm at. Yeah. And I'm very thankful for that.
That is a great way to end the podcast, Kent. Thank you so much for being my guest.
All right, Bill, thank you.
Discover how to heal your brain after stroke. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com. Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy quality, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.